Hello, everyone. We are live now on YouTube and Facebook and Twitter. So thank you everyone for joining. My name is Savannah, and I am the Book Week coordinator with Sask Books, the Creative Industry Association of Book Publishing in Saskatchewan. We are so honored to feature John Brady McDonald and his book, Kitotam, tonight as part of Book Week 2021. Just a few things before we get started. So tonight we initially had planned to do an in-person reading, and we kind of pivoted to this online format. And we filmed John reading at the Mann Art Gallery in Prince Albert. So what you're viewing tonight is the recording of his reading, and it is so beautiful and moving, and I hope you all stay tuned and watch the video in its entirety. John is an incredible speaker, and it was an honor to hear him. I just wanted to say a few things before we get started. First, Sask Books is located on Treaty 4 territory, which sits on the homelands of the Nahiwak, the Anishinaabeg, the Dakota, Lakota, Nakota, and is also the homeland of the Métis Nation. The video was filmed, like I said, at the Mann Art Gallery on Treaty 6 territory. I'd like to invite everyone to write in the comments the traditional land that you're viewing from. So I'm going to just post a link. If you don't know, I'm going to send it. So here's a helpful link for you. Please share where you're viewing from. We would love to hear. And if you can use that website if you don't know, wonderful. Also, acknowledgement is just one part of a larger commitment, and we would like to encourage everyone to read the TRC's calls to action and implement them. I'm also going to paste a link to the TRC calls to action as well. There you go. Hopefully that will be a good resource if it hasn't been already to you. We'd also like to thank our funders, the Department of Canadian Heritage, the Canada Book Fund, and Creative Saskatchewan. Without their support, Book Week would not be possible. Lastly, I want to read a little bit about John. So I'm just going to read a little bit of his bio, and then we'll start the video. So John McDonald is a multidisciplinary writer and artist, originally from Prince Albert, Saskatchewan. A sixth-generation direct descendant of Chief Mistawasis of the Plains Cree, John's writings and artwork have been displayed in various publications, private and permanent collections, and galleries around the world. John is one of the founding members of the PA Lowbrow Art Movement and is the vice president of Indigenous Peoples Artists Collective. John has studied at England's prestigious University of Cambridge, where in July 2000 he made international headlines by symbolically discovering and claiming England for the first peoples of the Americas. John is also an acclaimed public speaker who has presented in venues across the globe, such as the Black Hills Seminars on Reclaiming Youth, the Appalachian Mountain Seminars, the Edmonton and Fort McMurray Literary Festival, the Eden Mills Writers Festival, and at the Ottawa International Writers Festival. John was honored with the opportunity to speak in Australia in April 2001. John was also included in the Aboriginal Artists and Performers Inventory for the 2010 Olympic Winter Games in Vancouver, BC. John lives in northern Saskatchewan. So I'm just going to get this video up and running. Here we go. So everyone, please enjoy this video, and thank you again to Marcus at the Mann Art Gallery for letting us use the space to film. And please enjoy John's incredible reading.
All right, we'll try that again. That's it. My name is John Brady McDonald. I'm an Indigenous writer, artist, poet, performance artist, historian, and educator. I'm coming to you from my ancestral territory of Treaty 6 territory. I'm coming to you actually from my homeland, my ancestral homeland, Kistapininik, which in English is known as Prince Albert, Saskatchewan. Where I'm sitting right now, I'm sitting in the Mann Art Gallery, and I'm maybe 10 blocks away from where I was born and raised. I'm here today to share with you some of my words. In Cree we call them Timuin, our stories. I've been very, very blessed that Radiant Press in Regina honored me and honored my work by creating this book. This book is called Kitotam. In Cree, Kitotam means he speaks to it or he addresses it. The words in this book, the stories in this book, the poems in this book, they talk a lot about growing up in this environment, in this city, in this province, growing up as an Indigenous person. This book took many, many years to write. And while I would love to be able to share this in front of an audience, a live audience, and one day we'll be able to do that again. But unfortunately today is not that day. But you know what? As Indigenous people, one of our strengths is resiliency. We always find a way through. We always find a way to make things done, to do the best with what we're given. And that's what we're doing through this video. I want to thank the producers of this video. Thank you. Thank you for allowing me this time, this platform to share my words. I want to thank you, the audience, who, although you're not here in person, Manatuak, you're here in spirit. I want to thank John and Deborah Kennedy at Radiant Press for their hard work and their devotion to the written word and the effort that they put in to help me realize this dream. 20 years and many, many, many hundreds of rejections of these words not being shared. I'm very honored and very humbled that I get to share these words. The first piece I'm going to read is about growing up on these streets. Prince Albert is colloquially known as PA. Now, many smart Alex have said PA stands for different things. Pigs, you know what, and what else. But being born, being raised here, these streets, I look out this window and I could see the streets I grew up on, the streets I walked down. That's always going to stay with me. And the memories that come up every time I walk a street in the city. I stand on a corner before I cross the street. I look at a building and remember what used to be here. I remember friends I used to walk with that aren't here anymore. And you tend to look at things through rose-colored glasses, but as a realist, I tend not to do that. I don't like to sugarcoat. You know, I prefer the truth. So I'm going to share with you a poem from the work about growing up in the city of Prince Albert. Growing up in PA. Pale bleak sky over the city of jails. Chimneys spew columns of smoke into the air, too goddamn cold to be outside for long. These frozen days that never seem to end. Time and again I ask myself, why the hell do I still live here? The place has no future and the past is just that. Golden memories of childhood, tainted by the knowledge of what really happened. Those days of being broke, going hungry, pulp mill smells in the air. Those days they oiled the gravel roads in town. Those days of my youth. Those good times, few though they were. Young hellions run amok in the city, raiding crabapple trees and chokecherry bushes, riding stolen bikes down the sidewalks, finding treasures in garbage cans and dragging them back home. Scrounged change, buying slushes and fed into arcade games. Bottles picked for deposit returns, punches thrown in petty scuffles, mountain ashberries and dog shit squished into the soles of our shoes. Those days in Prince Albert. When I was a kid growing up in PA, the graveyards around town were an interesting place to explore. There's a few of them here in the city. One of the ones I'm going to talk about here, when I wrote the poem, at the time it was an abandoned graveyard. It was forgotten about. It was this cool little graveyard tucked behind where the Canadian Tire is in PA. And it was overgrown, and there was bush around it. You couldn't see it. There was no road access to it. It was tucked way back. Since I wrote this poem and this book has been published, the site's been developed. You know, they've cleared the trees, they've cleaned up the graveyard, they've paved a road to it. It's still a quaint little peaceful, respectful graveyard, but that charm of it's kind of lost. That, you know, the coolness of it, the abandonment of it, you know, the fact that this was a place that kind of existed early on in my childhood as an urban legend, and then as we got to explore a little bit, you know, we're sneaking in there at night and looking around. And so growing up here and exploring those places, visiting those people who used to walk the same land and who now lay buried beneath it, I want to honor those people with a little tale about their final resting place. Graveyards. There's an abandoned cemetery in the town where I grew up. It's tucked into the bushes behind the Canadian Tire. They are French Catholic graves for French Catholic dead. Very few visit, but someone mows the grass. The newest grave is dated 1956. A stillborn child. Notre ange précieux. I could show you where the bodies of those killed by Louis Riel are buried. They have red granite obelisks for markers, killed in action at the Battle of Duck Lake. My brother is buried there too. Between my brother's grave and the Duck Lake dead are the graves of nuns and soldiers, the graves of Ukrainians and Chinese, and at least 2 millionaires. In the corner, fenced off from the rest, lie the graves of the Jewish dead of my hometown. Their markers covered in pebbles and rocks in the old Jewish custom, though very few pay their respects anymore. Tombstones enthrall me. I find them beautiful. I always have, although I'd never have one of my own. I make it a point to visit graveyards when I can. One day I will make charcoal rubbings on acid-free paper and frame them as works of art. Memento mori. Just north of the city of Prince Albert, actually about 20 minutes from where I'm sitting right now, there's a place called Little Red River Park. It's a rural setting. It's part of, you're just approaching the boreal forest, so you got spruce trees, poplar trees, picnic sites, toboggan hills, ski hills, etc. It was a place where, as young people, we used to visit lots. In the wintertime, you'd go toboggan. You got a great big toboggan hill there, and you'd be a little 12-year-old kid running up there with the little crazy carpet, and cheating death as you're flying down this thing at 50 kilometers an hour. And as you got older, it was a place where You'd go and hang out with your friends. You'd go hang out with a girl or a boy. And when I was in my teen years in the 90s, we'd go out there all the time with our friends. We'd hang out there. And sometimes, you go out there with someone special. And I wrote this next piece in kind of as I remembered it, because I heard a song on the radio that every time I hear this song, it takes me right back to that spot, that moment in time. This poem's called Eights and Aces. I have this memory of a warm summer afternoon. The day growing long, 5:30 or 6, but the sun was still up and shining. I was sitting on a picnic table out at Little Red River Park, sitting there with this girl. Bob Seger was blaring out of the roll-down windows of her dark blue Ford. The song was a slow one, Fire Lake. She and I had gone to elementary school together, grade 5 or 6, I'm not sure which. What we were smoking that afternoon has helped to blur my memory. She was sitting there, her brown hair pulled back. She was wearing those green University of Saskatchewan Husky sweatpants and a Marilyn Manson hoodie, the standard uniform for girls in 1997. To our peers back then, at least a few of them, having sex meant you were going out. So I guess we were going out. I haven't seen that girl in 16 years. But whenever I hear Fire Lake now, I feel warm and high. Several years ago, the city of Prince Albert lost an amazing individual. For nearly 20 years, there was not a committee or a board or an organization, a charity, or anything that did not have the late Bernice Sais sitting on that board. Bernice sat on the boards and the organizations for the food bank, for the Friendship Center, the City of Police boards, the school boards, the Community Schools Association, the Prince Albert Outreach Board, the Waska Cultural School Board. If there was an organization or something in this town that's goal was to help people who needed help, Bernice was a part of that. And if she wasn't a part of it, she was one of the founders of it. I was very honored that when Bernice was awarded the Citizen of the Year, shortly before she passed away, I was asked to speak at her ceremony, at the award ceremony. And the first thing I said was, Bernice saved my life. When I was a kid growing up, we grew up poor in the city and we accessed the food bank. When I was a kid who was looking for acceptance, looking for guidance, looking for a place, and I accessed the Youth Activity Center, Bernice was on that board. When I was looking to regain my culture and I started to attend the Wanska Cultural School here in Prince Albert, Bernice was one of the people that fought to have that school. And when she passed away in 2004, her funeral, her ceremony was held here in this building on the main stage of the E.A. Rawlinson Center, which is adjacent to the Mann Art Gallery. And I was asked by the family, and I was honored by the family. I was given tobacco and asked if I could sing her honor song as the people filed past her casket. And how I managed to get through that without crying, bawling my eyes, I don't know. because it's been, she passed in 2004, and this city still, we could use her. Boy, could we use her. One of her pet projects was the Voices of the North. It's a country music festival, an Aboriginal music showcase that's held here during the Prince Albert Rona Festival every year. And when she passed that mantle of running that on to Cheryl Kimbley, who, those are some big shoes to fill. And I will give Cheryl 100% of the credit. She's done an amazing job filling those shoes. And Cheryl asked me, would you come and speak at Voices of the North? And I said, absolutely. So I wrote this piece for Bernice to read there. And the piece is titled For Bernice. The piece talks about all the people Bernice helped. And I dedicate this piece not just to her, but to those people who are on our streets right now, who, if Bernice was here, we'd be out there helping them right now as much as we can, because definitely the people in this city need all the help they can get. For Bernice. We were street kids. Disposable urchins not worth the time. Immature hooligan bastards with no respect. Except to her. We were vagrants. Homeless leeches not worth the effort. Drains on society who should go get a job. Except to her. We were Indians. Decimated and ignorant races not worth the welfare checks. Drunken stereotypes that should just go back to the res. Except to her. We were abused women. Terrible mothers who should have known better. Or should have been better wives, or they wouldn't have been hit. Except to her. We were hungry. Lazy bums who can't afford to put food on the table. Always looking for a handout. Except to her. We were inmates. Criminal monsters who should be locked up forever and kept away from the decent and good people. Except to her. We were the addicted, diseased junkies who deserve what they get, drug-pushing monsters who make the streets unsafe. Except to her. We were prostitutes, whores, and loose women who are filthy and slutties who sell their bodies to whomever comes along. Except to her. The fragile ones in Prince Albert's shadows. The dirty little secrets, the sordid characters of this gateway to the north. To us, she was Mama Bear. Our voice, our defender, our war chief, sometimes our last link to whatever makes us human beings. Sometimes our last link to life itself. We are the chorus, the multitudes of street people and brown people and beaten people, of young people and poor people and hungry people, of people behind bars and people hiding behind bedroom doors and people trading this for that. But we are people, and she knew that. And she never let us forget that, because she never forgot. She gave life to Shauna, Mike, and James, but she saved so many more. She sacrificed herself, worked her body and spirit to the end for us, not because she had to, but because others wouldn't. There are those among us who should not be here. Not with the cards life dealt to them. But they are here because she didn't fold, but went in all for them. I should know. I'm one of them. That's a hard poem to read. What makes it sad is that where we're at right now, behind me, on the other side of this wall, stands a building where the Youth Activity Center once stood. And that building was a beacon, a haven for people on the street, young people on the street. And that building now has a security fence around it to keep street people away from people accessing that center. And it hurts to see that building in a cage, knowing that for 20 years that building was a beacon of hope, and now it's caged, it's barred. And I hate to say I'm glad she's not here to see it, because I want her to be here to see it, because if Bernice was here, that barricade would not. I'm a residential school survivor. I grew up in the Prince Albert Indian Student Residence. I was there from 1984 to 1989. I had a severe disconnect from my culture. I lost my language. I had no connection to my culture. I was taught that being an Indigenous person was an evil thing, that I was going to go to hell for being an Indigenous person. I was punished for speaking my language. I watched as our culture was mocked and ridiculed, but at the same time, I watched as little Indigenous kids in our classroom, if it was a drought, how many times we'd get told, "Well, why don't you just do a rain dance?" In today's society, we often get asked, why are we so angry as Indigenous people? For us as Indigenous people to be angry, it can be a dangerous thing, because you get this image of the angry Indian. We don't have that luxury and privilege of sharing our anger without having it used against us, and that stereotype of the angry Indian, always yelling, always mad. And you hear those comments about, we got to circle the wagons, the Indians are mad. I heard somebody say that 2 weeks ago. Somebody asked me one time, why are we upset? Why are you guys so angry? And this is before the discovery of the bodies, the rediscovery of the bodies. This was before Idle No More. This was before Colton Boushie. Somebody asked me, why are we so upset? This was my response. Why are we upset? We are a fractured people, learning a fractured culture, secondhand, put together with bits and pieces of what colonization missed with the dustpan, and taught to us by equally fractured teachers who have to do the best they can with what they have, and patch the holes with plastic pony beads from Walmart, while being led by power-hungry chiefs and councils with dollar signs in their eyes and big shiny new Ford trucks. Like tourists, we learn the teachings of the Red Road through trinkets and Pendleton blankets, trying to become the stoic, bucolic Red Indians of the movies. Wouldn't you be mad? As an Indigenous person in Canada, and somebody I've had the opportunity and the honor to be able to travel. When I was 19 years old, I was awarded a scholarship to attend the University of Cambridge on a history scholarship. I had the opportunity to live in England for a summer, and it opened my eyes. When I was, before that, my existence, my whole world was this, maybe 14 square block radius of right outside this window of the downtown and the West Flat of Prince Albert, Saskatchewan. That was my world. An urban Indigenous world, that was it. That's all I knew. That's all I could see for myself in the future. And I had people who took a chance on this scrawny, well, I was scrawny back then, a scrawny little street kid. They told me, we're giving you this opportunity. And I got to go on my own as a young man to England and live there and study there. And one of the things I noticed was the stereotype, the Canadian stereotype. Polite, nice. The Mounties always dressed like Dudley Do-Right. It's always winter. And I remember for the first little bit I played along. I had a woman one time when I was there, she said, "Oh, you're from Canada?" I said, "Yes, I am." She goes, "Oh, it must be a culture shock." I said, "A little bit." And what she had said was, "Well, I know I'd find it a culture shock if I came to running water and buildings and stuff." She assumed that we were still, living in the 1800s in log cabins. And I started thinking about those stereotypes, and I started thinking about that perception the world has of us and how insulated and protected Canadian society is by that stereotype, and how important that stereotype is to the psyche and mentality and character and identity of so many people in this country. And knowing, growing up here, that large chunks of that are fallacies, knowing that there's this undercurrent of immense racism, of immense bigotry, of homophobia, of xenophobia, of the residential schools, the genocide our people suffered, and the continued, the fact that we have communities in this country without drinking water. We have communities in this country where there are more kids, Indigenous kids, in care right now than at the height of the residential school, the time of the residential schools. How many people still hide behind that outsider's look of Canada as this polite, nice, in a way that makes sure that, to be honest, I'll be honest, they hold on to they say, well, at least we're not Americans. And so, and I think that's a huge part of the Canadian identity, is holding on to that quickly, it's slowly dissipating the veneer of what it means to be in this country in the 21st century. And so I wrote this piece many years ago after I got back, and I started to realize, the fallacy of it. It's called Canadian Skin. Swathe yourself in ecstasy, O you of Canadian skin. Yours is an existence where the role is cast in the eye of the globe. Your reputation precedes by decades an open diary to the countrymen of the lorry driver who delivered your luggage to a village you've never been to. Born of the fetid muck of battle and baptized in the Hollywood Hills, the truths read as scripture of surge and horse and northwest mounted. Feral domain and polar display, kind and polite, and our O's like ooze. The bride of truth veiled in ignorance. Tread softly onward, O you of Canadian skin. The overcoat fits nicely, worn with ease. But the warm winds of change shift, and the comforting cloak woven long before will be too warm. Too much to bear, O you of Canadian skin. You're still good? Okay. This language is a borrowed language. That I speak English because I no longer possess conversational Cree. I can no longer communicate in Cree. And so I've borrowed this language, forcefully borrowed this language. And I've tried my very best to take this language and use it to the best of my ability to create, to tell stories, to share the stories of those no longer here to share their stories, to create art, to make people feel. And the next piece I'm going to read is kind of my take on language, my take on where we're at right now with the English language, where we're at in the 21st century, in a rapidly over technological world. The fact that there are blessings. I'm coming to you live, or coming to you through this through technology, so I don't want to bite the hand that feeds. I call myself a hypocritical Luddite. I don't like technology, but unfortunately I have to use it. We all do. And the piece I'm going to read next is my take on language, and it was a fun piece I wanted to write. And I wrote this piece sitting in a coffee shop in Guelph. I was at the Eden Mills Writers Festival, and I had just done a reading there, and had a chance as I was walking. I'm going to drop a name here. I actually bumped into Margaret Atwood, and she had listened to me talk, and she said she liked what I had to say, and so we got her picture taken and stuff. And I was sitting about that thinking, here I am, this guy with this borrowed language, these words that aren't mine, and here's this person who's made such a name for themselves with this, and they're saying they like my words, and kind of messed with my head a little bit. So I wrote this piece sitting in a little coffee shop in Guelph. On language. Words stitched together in particular cadence, meant to be read in this particular way, be it out loud or silently in your head. It is odd that so much of these various combinations of the 26 letters of the English language are manipulated to increase emotional connectivity. And what of all those words birthed upon lined sheets of paper or pixelated computer screens, words that do not meet the requirements and are torn from coil ring binders or select all, delete. Eradicated from existence, their only crime having been not a good enough combination of those 26 letters. Those combinations compiled like a spoonful of alphabet soup, or tiles from a Scrabble board, joined, married, consecrated, these straight lines, curlicues, whirls, swirls, and dots, a ciphered code. There's more than a few of us first taught this code, sitting in front of television screens as Big Bird and Grover, Bert and Ernie indoctrinated us into this cult of mysteries and taught us the incantation, the sacred song of knowledge. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P. Those hieroglyphics we stared at from our school desk as they hung upon the walls, written in chalk at the very top of the blackboard. Letters, vowels and consonants, the dying art of words being slaughtered by abbreviated phrases like Huxley's Brave New World, this newspeak with its LOLs and OMGs, and a generation that cannot write in cursive and cannot read anything handwritten. What would Big Bird say if he could see us now? The next poem I'm going to share, I've never shared live ever. This is going to be the first reading of it. I can say it now, I'm very honored to be part of the B in LGBTQ2. And it's something I spent a lot of my time closeted, not being able to share that aspect of who I am. In today's society, I could feel a little bit more safer, a bit more open to be able to be that. And, while I am, I live I'm married to a woman. I'm in a heteronormative relationship. Been so for 20 years. We're raising our children. We attend pride parades. We are very supportive of the LGBT community. To be part of that is something that it took me. Like I said, I was closeted for a long time. I could never acknowledge that aspect of myself, and it took me a long time to be comfortable enough to share that. And even as I'm saying now, I'm kind of those old butterflies are still kind of floating. The poem I'm going to share right now is going to talk a little bit about the first relationship I had with, my first same-sex relationship, and talks a little bit about those moments where we couldn't have public displays of affection back then. It was kind of it was a good way to get beat up, and unfortunately, in many parts of the world, even in this country, in this community, it still can happen. And so, when I wrote this piece, it's written in a narrative style of sharing a moment, and it's something that when I wrote it, after I finished writing, I exhaled. I exhaled a breath I didn't know I was holding. This piece is entitled "With Miguel." It was around 8 or 9 as I walked down the sidewalk with Miguel. The sun was setting and the shadows were getting longer as everything took on an orange glow. The sounds and smells coming out of the restaurants and bars along the street were colliding with the sounds and smells of the cars crawling east, towards the hills and away from downtown. The places along the street were all ethnic. Cuban restaurants, Vietnamese restaurants, soul food joints, and hole-in-the-wall spots with signs written in colorful languages unknown to me, a Cree kid from the middle of nowhere. Miguel shook a few hands as we walked. His burgundy silk shirt looking like copper in the setting sun. His guitar was squeezed slightly by the neck in his left hand. He switched it back and forth, trying to avoid smacking it against parking meters and lampposts. When he switched the guitar from hand to hand once or twice, our fingers would meet for a moment and intertwine. The closest we came to a public display. We walked past the doors of what was once a clothing store. The glass display windows long ago boarded up and painted a dark chocolate brown, covered with staples, tape, and the remnants of God knows how many posters and flyers. A door opened and a little Vietnamese man stepped out, short, balding, and 50. He wore a white short-sleeved dress shirt and wheat-colored slacks, dark sunglasses shielding his eyes. He lit the cigarette dangling from his lips. He recognized us both. "Hey," he called out. "How are you guys doing tonight?" We smiled and said we were doing fine. Miguel brushed a stray hair from his face. Our friend's name was Tim. He was one of the boat people, and he was proud of that. He took a drag off his smoke. He asked what we were doing. We told him we were wandering, maybe looking for a drink or a bite to eat, but nothing solid as of yet. Tim smiled. He looked at Miguel, whose soft, dark skin and long black hair in his purple shirt might have gotten us beat up in the bars down by the bus station. "You know," Tim said through a lungful of smoke, "Maria is looking to hire a player." "What happened to what's his name?" we asked, as I watched the little old man step out of the corner store. "He quit," Tim said. Miguel asked me, "What do you think?" Reminded of my thirst, I replied, "It's up to you." Miguel nodded. He said we'd go talk to Maria. and we headed west, back into the setting sun. The final piece I'm going to read is one that means a lot to me. Last summer, when the world was still trying to come to terms with what this pandemic was dealing with, what we were dealing with, where it was going, we had no idea how long it was going to last. In the middle of that summer, a young man took a stand. Tristan DeRoche is a fiddler from northern Saskatchewan. He walked from Laurent, Saskatchewan to Regina. That's almost a 12-hour round trip in and of itself. He made that walk to bring attention to a very serious plight in northern communities. The immense amount of suicide that takes place, that happens in those northern communities. The pain and anguish of young people taking their own lives. When he got to Regina, Tristan set up a teepee in front of the legislature. He did so to bring awareness to the people inside that building who were, there was a group of people inside that building who were doing everything possible to not pass a bill that would have brought awareness and help to the north for people dealing with suicide. Tristan, in his role as a fiddle player, was asked too many times to play at funerals, to play over the bodies of people who took their own lives. And he went to Regina and he went into a fast, into ceremony. And instead of bringing the people's attention being on what he was doing in terms of the suicides in the north, the people in that community, their biggest concern was he was camping in front of the legislature and he was going to wreck the lawn, and this is not right, and we can't blah 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 blah. They're putting so much effort into the fact that he was breaking bylaws and not getting what he was saying at all. I always read this poem paired with another one. I read this one because it talks a little bit about my experience going through that territory, and then I pair it with Tristan's poem so that you get a sense of a northerner's take on it all. And in that perspective, if you're coming from the north, where the tree line is always there, where you are on the Precambrian Shield, you're in the northern boreal forest, and to go from that to us, what feels like nothing, Muggy, nothing. No, it is a shock to the system as a northerner going down south. So the first poem I'll read is called Walkabout in Treaty 4 Territory. And the next poem is the poem for Tristan. Walkabout in Treaty 4 Territory. I got out of the car to stretch my legs at the place where Highway 2 ends. The summer smell of southern Saskatchewan is strange to me. I stopped to pick buffalo sage on this bald, parched prairie. The wind takes my tobacco offering and blows it towards the 18-wheelers thundering eastbound past me. I turn to face north. The ribbon of asphalt at my feet stretches from here to Larange. 400 kilometers down this stretch lies the turnoff to my house. I feel suffocated by the open land. I need trees. An ode to the fiddler. Therein lies the fiddler, the northerner, sitting in the shade of the man-made trees near the man-made lake. 635 kilometers south of where the trees and waters were there first. Therein lies the fiddler, his tea growing cold in his ceramic mug, as the sun takes the shadow of his lodge, the shadows of the photographs around it, and stretches them far across the man-made lawns, so precious to the ones with the guns and the badges. Therein lies the fiddler, smiling the tired smile of a warrior spirit as people come for their photo ops and clamor to be on the right side of all of this. Therein lies the fiddler. Upon his heart the spirits of young ones, upon whose caskets and urns the notes of his fiddle fell upon too many times. Therein lies the fiddler, speaking for those who cannot speak for themselves, outside of a building full of people who will not listen, fighting a battle for a world where young people will not have to see the end of a rope as a solution. Upon land where Riel was subjected to such a solution. Therein lies the fiddler. Like the warriors of old, hungry spirit, hunger strike upon the prairies where trees never grew. Therein lies the fiddler, his medicine bundle overflowing like the circles of photographs around his lodge. Therein lies the fiddler. I'm very happy to say that shortly after Tristan's efforts and after much howdy-do about it down there, that initiative was passed, and that help is going to those communities. That awareness is going to those communities, and I'm very happy that the message Tristan was fighting so hard for got to the people it needed to get to eventually, but it took too damn long. And with that, I'd like to close. I'd like to thank you for spending this time with me, for listening to me go on and on. These words sometimes hurt. These words sometimes are angry. They might make you feel angry. As artists, as writers, that's part of our job. We make people feel. And if you felt an emotional connection to what I read tonight, be it anger, be it joy, be it sadness, then I'm honored that I was able to provide that emotional connection. As I said earlier, we're in a technological world where emotional content is starting to slip, and too many people, and you lose that emotional connection. And this pandemic, where we're not allowed to be close to people, we can no longer interact in the way that we once could. It's more important than ever that we retain that emotional connection. And those feelings we get, those are teachings in our culture. We are told that our emotional connection, those teachings, we learn from them, and we're given those emotions for a reason. And I hope that my words and my experiences and my stories have brought you perhaps some joy, some entertainment. I hope you're entertained. Yeah. And I want to thank you for sharing this little bit of time with me. Kinanas kumten. Exe. Okay.
Hi, everyone. I just wanted to say thank you so much for listening and tuning in to John's reading. As you know, as you've seen, it was such a special thing to hear. And I appreciate you all coming to this virtual reading tonight. Thank you to John again for sharing your words with us and just providing such a moving, just a wonderful evening. So thank you so much. I'd like to thank Marcus again at the Man Art Gallery. I'd like to thank all of you for attending tonight. Once more, I'd like to thank our funders, the Department of Canadian Heritage, the Canada Book Fund, and Creative Saskatchewan. And of course, I'd love to thank my coworkers, Jillian, Emily, and Dan. Without their help, Book Week would not happen. So thank you everyone for coming tonight, and I hope you have a lovely rest of your evening. Thank you so much, and good night.